ومعنا الحديث حول التطلعات لعام 2025 الأسهم الأمريكية سانديب شارما، وهو رئيس قسم الاستثمار في سنتاكس كابيتال. أهلا بك سانديب وهابي نيو يير. دعنا نبدأ سانديب من تطلعات ل 2025. عامين على التوالي مكاسب أكثر من 20%. هل هنالك احتمال ل 20% إضافية ل 2025 أم أن هذا سيكون معجزة؟
Well, Happy New Year to you, your family, and your viewers also. Thank you for having me on your show. Yes, it is quite a staggering performance by U.S. markets to have more than 20% return. And if you look at the pattern has been almost consistent, overlaying one year over the other. However, I think we're going to be looking at a lot of challenges going into the next year, primarily because valuations, as you mentioned, are very stretched. S&P 500 is now trading with a forward P multiple of 25. And a lot of good news is priced in. So the question is, how much more good news is there? And unless we find another driver of returns, such as AI and something similar in technology, which seems unlikely to me, I think we'll see a year that will be, at the very least, very tepid and perhaps produce some negative returns during the first part of the year.
سنديب، أي القطاعات هي التي تراهن عليها العام المقبل، الفاليو أو الجروث؟
Well, within value, I think I would be more specific. I think, as we mentioned previously, materials, industrials, and these areas look very attractive to us, primarily because we feel that if you look at globally, all the major developed economies where we had elections, they've all resulted in at least a shift of power from the incumbent administration, and in most cases, a complete change of power. And a couple of the countries that didn't have elections, like Germany and France, France had a ad hoc election, and Germany's headed to election early part of next year. So I think all of that promotes the idea of an environment globally where it's going to be a country-first agenda. And if it's a country-first agenda, focusing more on bringing onshoring and policies that are more focused on the country's voters, I think that should promote for a more favorable environment for materials and industrials.
سانديب، جزء كبير من أي توقعات سيتأثر طبعا بمسار معدلات الفائدة. اليوم عندما تنظر إلى عوائد السندات أين أنهت هذا العام، لا أعتقد بأن كثيرون توقعوا بأن نغلق هذا العام بقرب من 4.5 4.6% لعوائد العشر سنوات. فكيف تنظر إلى عام 2025؟ إلى أي درجة ستبقى هذه الفوائد مرتفعة وبالتالي تأثيرها على الأسهم؟
That's, I think, as you noted in your earlier commentary, is one of the most important things to be watching. I think we are in a bond market crisis, quite frankly. And when the Fed started lowering rates, 10-year treasuries were about 3.6. And as I noted, or as I checked a little earlier, 10-year treasuries a little like 453 basis points. So as the Fed has cut 100 basis points, the 10-year treasury yield has moved up 93 basis points, which is quite an anomaly and a big cause for concern. And the outlook for interest 10-year treasury will be more dependent on how aggressive the new administration is in pursuing their policies and whether or not the new Treasury Secretary is able to balance the need for refinancing $7 trillion of debt for the U.S. and in relationship to a growth agenda with tax cuts and tariffs. So I think there's a lot of careful footing required going into next year. And as the U.S. politics landscape suggests, if the new administration has to get something done, they will have to push very much in the first part of the year. So the challenge becomes whether they want to take a lot of pain in the beginning or they want to wait for their agenda to be implemented a little bit later while they're able to refinance debt at more modest rates. So I think that is a very big issue for the bond market, and it is entirely possible in the interim the 10-year treasury slips or peaks up to closer to 5%. It would not be out of the works, and if it gets there, I think we'd have a lot of problem in most asset classes.
سنديب، جغرافيا اليوم من الذي تراهن عليه أكثر؟ يعني أوروبا كما تعلم أدائها لم يكن، وخصوصا يعني مثل فرنسا وبعض الدول الأخرى حتى أنهت هذا العام على تراجعات في أسواق ناشئة، كذلك الأمر. الصين لم يكن عام سيء على الرغم من كل التقلبات. على سبيل المثال شانغهاي أغلق على مكاسب بحوالي 17%، شانزن حوالي 13% من الارتفاعات، ولكن طبعا هذا يأتي كان بعد ضغوط كبيرة شهدناها خلال الفترة الماضية. فإذا سألتك ما الذي سيكون overweight والunderweight في البورتفوليو من الناحية الجغرافية؟
Well, the short answer to your question is I think it'll be emerging markets, Europe, followed by the US. However, the long answer is it depends on what policies the European governments decide to follow, as well as what kind of a fiscal bazooka China is willing to unleash. We've been waiting for that, and the markets have been waiting for that for a few months now. But it's understandable that the Chinese have not yet, provided a very significant stimulus outlook. Perhaps they're waiting for a new administration to come in. Perhaps they're looking to see what will be the tariff situation and then present their fiscal program accordingly. But right now, the markets are very disappointed in China's outlook for supporting its economy. And unless that changes, it will be a big overhang. In emerging markets, I think India probably will do worse than China. So the focus will shift on China, but I think within the emerging markets, I think China should do quite well if they're able to launch a big stimulus, and followed by Europe, and I think US would be leading behind.
شكرا جزيلا لك سنديب شارما، رئيس قسم الاستثمار في سنتكس كابيتال، وكل عام وأنت بخير.
Happy New Year to you as well, and thank you.